Daniel 12:666, the mark of the beast, Sandela, death decree. There is a warning. Chapter 12, Michael stands up, future application of Daniel 12, strategic World War II warfare, Sunday law and death decree, and the second coming of the King of Kings. Daniel 12 will bring us to Revelation 13 with the mark of the beast, 666, the Sunday law, and the death decree. Before I read the scripture, I'd like to look at the warning that is given in the book of Daniel chapter 12. Daniel 12 is a warning. Let us read and study the 12th chapter of Daniel. It is a warning that we shall all need to understand before the time of the end. Daniel 12 is a future application. I saw that the anger of the nations, the wrath of God, and the time to judge the dead were separate and distinct, one following the other. Also, that Michael had not stood up, and that the time of trouble, such as never was, had not yet commenced. The nations are now getting angry, but when our high priest has finished his work in the sanctuary, he will stand up, put on the garments of vengeance, and then the 7 last plagues will be poured out. When Christ sits down by the right hand of the Father, that means he starts in his work in this particular area like he did in the holy, and then after that in the most holy. But when he stands up, that means he has finished his work in that particular area and is ready to take on the next one. So what it is saying here, and this happened after 1844, these two were written, one in 1903 and not too long after 1844. So the warning is on to Daniel chapter 12 and specifically verse 1 and 2, 3 right now, and I'm going to read those. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people, and there shall be, count how many shall there is in those 2 paragraphs, there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. It has to be the book of life, right? And many of them that slept in the dust of the earth shall awake. So far it's 5 shall. Some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And they that shall be wise, number 6, shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. So 8 times in 3 verses, you could say, the word shall, which means future, is mentioned. How can we say that Daniel 12 is past when none of these have happened yet? Michael has not stood up from the most holy. The judgment hour is not over yet. The plagues have not started to fall, that's for sure. And then, of course, the time of trouble. And so all of these things, and even the dead rising from the earth, that's pretty scary. If people think that this has even happened before, well, I missed it. We all missed it. And so we know that this has not happened. It didn't happen in 1844. They were trying to make it as its present day application because they were prisoner of time and prisoner of hope. But right now we realize that Daniel 12, including with Daniel 11 and some of the other chapter in Daniel you saw, have a dual application which is permitted in the Bible. Sometimes a prophecy can have more than 2 applications. So therefore, when I read now verse 7, it will make sense and the rest. It shall be for a time, times, and half a time. So basically, we have 1260 days here express. You calculate that times meaning a year. So if you go for a time, 1 year, times 2 years and a half, that will be based on the 360-day year, prophetic year, which bring the lunar calendar and the solar calendar together, the cycle, and you divide by 2 and you get 360. And so when you calculate the time times and a half time, which is 3.5, you come to 1,260 days, which is 3.5 year prophetic time. And when ye shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. And here, because there is no image, no beast, no horn, no symbolism, we know that the end of these wonders are literal time. They are not symbolic. It's impossible. We will never go again through a long period of time like the 1,260 days or the 2,300 days of years. We are told that. And from the time the scepter shall be taken away and the abomination that makes desolate Rome set up, there shall be 1,290 days. And these are also the literal time. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,305 and 30 days. 1,335 days, and it could not be years. Who can last as long as 1,335 years when there is a blessing if they wait that long? Again, but thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. And then it repeats almost the same thing in verse 13. But go thou thy way till the end, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days. So there is sufficient and in there and shall in the other verses to tell us that this is definitely for the end. So as we pass on now to the explanation of these verses, you will see how they apply with Revelation 13. Daniel 12, the mark of the beast, 666, the Sunday law, and the death decree. This is actually the language of Revelation 13. But Daniel 12, as a warning, is preparing us in advance with those 3 timelines. And just like during World War II, there was strategic warfare, which was established by Hitler and his armies, and it became their organization of the field forces with the World War II. We know that the German operational doctrine emphasized at the time sweeping movements meant to destroy the enemy's force as quickly as possible. This approach, referred to as the Blitzkrieg, was being considered by many historians as having ancient prototypes practiced by Alexander and Napoleon. We know too in 2 Corinthians 2:11 that Lucifer has similar devices. Lest Satan should get an advantage of us, we are not ignorant of his devices. And now this sentence, which I quoted verbatim, but I kind of adapted it from the sentence above. Lucifer uses the same operational doctrine as Hitler and other army leaders, emphasizing sweeping movement meant to destroy every soul. And I'm not sure if it's Hitler who did not use the operational doctrine of Lucifer, or Lucifer used the same as Hitler. I leave you with that. As expressed in Daniel 11:24, he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds even for a time. With his army of fallen angels and human beings which have formed an alliance with him, Satan will attempt to deceive the very elect to the very time of the end. Our only safety is found in the work of Christ and the judgment in the most holy place. Now let us look at the chart here shown of the 1260, 1290, and the 1335 days. These 3 timelines are literal time. They have not occurred yet in history, although some have tried to do an application in the past of them as being a day for a year. But this is contrary to the rules that we have followed so far. In chapter 12 of Daniel, there is no more symbolism. There is no more horn, no more beast, no more any of the symbols that were used, like the image, for example, of Nebuchadnezzar. So therefore, this should be applied as a day for a day. And when we look at the three timeline, the longest one is the 1335 days wait. And this timeline starts with the voice of the United States with the National Sunday Law, which is found in chapter 13, verse 11. And I beheld another beast coming out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. The pen of inspiration tells us who is that beast coming out of the earth. The United States is a land that has been under the specific shield of the omnipotent one. And here is a striking figure of the rise and growth of the United States. The lamb-like horns, emblems of innocence and gentleness, well represent the character of the government of the United States as expressed in its two fundamental principles of republicanism and Protestantism. But we know, according to this prophecy, that the United States of America will soon change and will speak as a dragon. Now, as we start with the beginning with the voice of the United States, which is the voice of our legislation, it brings us to the voice of God in Revelation 16:17, which declare very clearly that the seventh angel poured out his vial in the air, and there came out a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne saying, "It is done." The voice of God will be announcing the end of the 1335 days wait. The way to calculate those 1335 days, you use the 360 days prophetic time, which is obtained from the lunar cycle plus the solar cycle divided by 2, and that will give you the 360. In 1335 days, we count 3 years, 8 months, and 15 days. Then we go to the 1260 days, and we start again with the voice of this time, the Universal Sunday Law, which unite all of the voice together of all over the world, and it's declared in chapter 13, verse 5, where I read, "There was given unto him a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months, or 1260 days, or 3 years and a half. Now that voice that declared the Universal Sunday Law all over the world after the United States National Sunday Law is finished with the voice of the Universal Death Decree in chapter 13, verse 15. "And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed." Very simple. Those are voices either from God or from the government. When the government speaks, it's his legislation. And that's how we find that out through the spirit of prophecy, that it's not a voice necessarily from one person. It's the government that passed legislation, and the people will know. It is not going to be in secret. And during the 1260 days, according to Daniel 12:7, we read that the holy people will be scattered. Now, the 1290 days, which is actually 3 years, and then you have to add 7 months because it's 1290 instead of 1260, which was 3 years and 6 months. This one is 3 years and 7 months. And this is when the abomination of desolation is set up, which starts at the same time as the 1260 with the Universal Sunday Law. And it finishes all the way, you have to go with this one, all the way to the reign of the king, the 15 days. And then it terminates with the fall of Babylon, because you have to add 30 to the 1260. And then the second coming, the voice of doom, is announced when Revelation 16:18, the destruction is announced by the voice of doom, and it says, "And there was voices and thunders and lightning, and there was a great earthquake, such that was not since there were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great." So the voice of doom is announcing now the fall of Babylon. But first there is a reign of king, Revelation 17:12, for 1 hour, or 15 days. In this case, it's talking about when you're going to 1712, you will see there is a symbolism of the 10 horns again, the same 10 horns that we saw in the book of Daniel, and those beasts. And it says here, and the 10 horns which we saw are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as king 1 hour with the beast. So 1 hour here can be used from a prophetic point because of the symbolism, which gives you 15 days literal. The same is true for the fall of Babylon, which lasts for 1 hour, Revelation 18:10, or 15 days. So basically we have all the things in place except this time that is between the National Sunday Law and the Universal Sunday Law. And this one, the way you calculate it is simple. You start with the 1260 days and you add 15 days of the voice of the Universal Death Decree, which will give you 1275 days, which you subtract from 1335 is a very simple equation, mathematic. 1335 minus 1275 will give you 60 days or 2 months, which means that if we are right with this interpretation, there will be 2 months between the National Sunday Law to the Universal Sunday Law. If not, we have to recalculate. This is not giving you a date for the second coming because the National Sunday Law has not even passed yet in the United States. And if you don't believe at all in the Universal Sunday Law and the National Sunday Law, then don't even study this. But if you do, keep an eye on it. And if these things shall come to pass, I have to tell you that Christ is returning at Tabernacle in the fall. He came the first time and fulfilled the spring feast, and he's coming the second time and he will fulfill, since 1844, trumpet, Day of Atonement. Now he will fulfill Tabernacle. Therefore, the voice of the United States National Sunday Law, we should expect that voice in the spring in order to finish in the fall, a bit like what we did with the 3 years and a half of the book of Daniel when we calculate the 31 AD. So spring to spring to spring, and then half a year. So you're going to have the first year will bring you to, it will start in the spring, and then it will bring you to 3 spring, and then half a year to a fall, and that's when we're expecting Christ. So these are the explanation of the 3 timeline, 1260, 1290, 1335 days, which we believe are literal. This is the end of the study of the prophecy of Daniel, and it is a call to stand up for the Lord and be counted in his army, because we know that Lucifer has a strategic warfare already, which he has practiced for a long time. We know that from the very beginning of the great controversy in heaven, it has been his purpose to overthrow the law of God. It was to accomplish this that he entered upon his rebellion against the Creator, and though he was cast out of heaven, he has continued the same warfare upon the earth, to deceive men and thus lead them to transgress God's law is the object which he had steadfastly pursued. We as a people have not accomplished the work that God has committed to us. We are not ready for the issue to which the enforcement of the Sunday law will bring us. It is our duty, as we see the sign of approaching peril, to arouse to action. Let none sit in calm expectation of the evil, comforting themselves with the belief that this work must go on because prophecy has foretold it, and that the Lord will shelter his people, as the Jews expected in 70 AD. We are not doing the will of God if we sit in quietude, doing nothing to preserve liberty of conscience. Fervent, effectual prayer should be ascending to heaven that this calamity may be deferred until we can accomplish the work which has so long been neglected. Let there be more earnest prayer, and then let us work in harmony with our prayers. May the Lord bless you and continue to shine his face upon you and give you peace. God bless you. Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his, and he changeth the times and the seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise, and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him. I thank thee and praise thee, O thou God of my fathers, who has given me wisdom and might, and has made known unto me now what we desired of thee. For thou hast made known unto us the king's matter. Blessed be the name of God forever